following program contains the views and opinions of the host, speakers, and participants. They do not reflect the policies of the producers, advertisers, and advisors of AU Paws Radio, including Adelphi University's Board of Trustees, administrative faculty, or its affiliates. AU Paws radio station encourages freedom of speech, but does not endorse any specific viewpoints or messages. Listener discretion is advised, especially for potentially sensitive or controversial topics. Hello everyone, welcome to the very first episode of the Earle Lab, where we talk about all things neuroscience here at Adelphi and how it can help your daily college life. I'm your host, Hemish, a junior molecular neuroscience major and also a biology minor. So, what exactly are we going to talk about here at the Earle Lab? So essentially, the Earle Lab is a podcast that is mostly educational and scientific based, where we discuss ways and methods for undergraduate college students to improve their focus, productivity, and motivation across different activities. These can include improving performance and study habits during exam seasons like midterms and finals, tips for managing e-board responsibilities, whether you're a new president or just getting on the e-board for the first time, and how to outline a daily schedule to help you plan out all of the other assignments that you have to tackle throughout the day. We'll also talk about techniques to take care of a student's mind and health in a chaotic and undergraduate environment. The podcast will provide context by talking about prior relative advancements in the field of neuroscience, and we'll also be talking about interesting recent developments that are going on, such as new articles and new information being published in newspapers. That way, we can anchor the advice that I'm trying to provide in some sort of scientific background, so that way, you know, as a student, that what I'm talking about can actually help you, that it's been proven to, and there's very real implications for what it can do for you. All right, so that was the formal introduction out of the way. Now, let's really talk about what we're trying to achieve through the Earle Lab. For any of you that are familiar with the Huberman Lab, which is a podcast started by Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, that is a podcast that we'll actually be taking heavy inspiration from. So we'll be using, again, neuroscience knowledge and other scientific knowledge to help people by sort of focusing on that connection between brain activity and behavioral patterns. Some issues with more specialized podcasts like the Huberman Lab is that they tend not to exactly directly apply to certain demographics, one of them, of course, being college students. And because they're much more broad in nature while being very, very specific in the information being given, it can become a challenge to extrapolate useful bits and pieces of knowledge and figure out, well, okay, how can I actually take this and use it to help my everyday life? If that's you, well then don't worry, because that's what the Earle Lab is for. Again, while this is a neuroscience-based podcast, I, Hemish, your host, am just an undergraduate student myself. I am not a wellspring of wisdom. So what I'll be talking about and the information that I'll be talking about is simply just an amalgamation and collection of my own research and how I think, in addition to how the research states, it can help you. So these will include readings that I do throughout my undergraduate lab research endeavors, like scientific journal articles, keeping up with the daily news. I know that the New York Times, which, fun fact, all Adelphi students have a free subscription to, has sections that specifically talk about cognitive neuroscience and psychology. We'll also be looking through other websites, blogs, and even using information from certain books. Again, to reiterate, we will be looking at the brain's relationship with the body and how it can improve your health as a student. But more so than that, I'm trying to reimagine how this information can be utilized for a student. How can it help you to study? How can it help you to get better sleep? How can it help you to be a better, more healthy, and more well-minded student? In other ways to achieve this end, I'll also be trying to invite guests throughout the podcast on certain episodes. These guests can include other students, either majoring in neuroscience or from other backgrounds, whether it be biology, psychology, cognitive neuroscience, molecular neuroscience, or even certain professors from departments like biology, the Derner School of Psychology, the School of Health Sciences, and so on. In addition to providing my own perspective and my own advice on certain topics, you will be able to have a second source, a second opinion that can help you maybe better relate the information to yourself, better figure out how you can make sense of it. So stay tuned for that. All right, so that's the main gist of the Earle Lab Podcast. As you can tell, I am not trying to lecture you like your science professor that you take every 8 a.m. morning on a Monday. I am just trying to find a way how I can present information in a digestible manner and for you to use it for your own benefit. Because that's really what science research is about at the end of the day. Sure, there will be some people that will use it to fulfill their CVs, look good on a resume, apply to graduate school. But what comes after that? Well, we have to try to use this information to make money for ourselves. But after that, obviously it's to help people, right? We want to try and make the world a little bit of a better place. And if I can do that with just one student here at Adelphi, if just one student maybe is able to use my advice to make their daily college lives just a little bit more productive, a little bit more manageable, then that'll be a success. The whole podcast will be a major success. So let's go over just a brief rundown of what each episode will tackle. So for next week's episode, we'll be talking about how to improve studying and specifically focusing on the role of memorization. So that will entail how students can perform better memorization techniques, why exactly this is important. So I'll actually be talking a little bit about how memory works in the brain. And then from there, what specific studying techniques will be able to improve memorization over a long period of time. After that, we'll be talking about sleep. How can you get better sleep? That will involve heavy discussion with sleep spindles, circadian rhythms, of course, delta waves, and the difference that everyone has with sleep patterns and how we can sort of adjust for that, accommodate for that, while still keeping up with a grueling schedule. And then after that, there's a lot of ideas I have planned out. Just to list a few, I want to talk about how we can plan and schedule daily assignment. So I sort of touched upon that earlier. Tips and tricks for managing e-board positions. How to pay better attention in lectures. So going back to the dreaded 8 a.m. Monday lecture, how can we improve that? Simply, how can we find ways to de-stress? If we're feeling burnt out, if we have a lot of assignments, we don't have enough time to relax, what are ways that we can do to very quickly sort of rejuvenate ourselves? How to get involved in research that interests you as undergrad. Research can be a big part of your undergrad endeavors, but it's not always clear how to get involved, so I'll be giving some tips for that. How can we tackle multiple deadlines, especially when they fall on the same day? How can social media both help and harm your academic performances? If you want to get involved in study abroad, what are some good avenues for that? And why is it important to study abroad? And then finally, we can talk about how we can deal with cramming for finals, how to avoid it, and if it is unavoidable, just being a little bit realistic, how we can navigate around that. And then finally, at the end of the semester, we can talk about why breaks matter, why it's important for you to rest your mind, rest your brain, and how you can still make the most out of a break, do your internships, do your volunteering, do your job, but still feel well rested for what will inevitably be another demanding semester, just a month or two ahead of you. But that's been it for me, your host Hemish. This has been the first episode of the Earle Lab. I'm very excited to see where this podcast can go. I definitely feel a little bit like a trailblazer, trying to forge a path, because, obviously first podcast trying to be done on Paws Radio. Paws Radio itself is very new, and it's just exciting to be a part of something that could blossom into hopefully a very major endeavor here at Adelphi. As always, remember to mind up each and every single day. All right, have a good one, guys. Take care.